Lots of people are naturally outraged at being searched in supermarkets and made to feel like a criminal. And maybe some of them are, but probably most of them are not. So let's take a look in this video at what shops can and cannot do, so that if you are in a supermarket, you know what to look out for, whether they can or cannot search you, and some of the pitfalls. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. So lots of different news outlets, and just to name a few, Daily Record and The Guardian are talking about, in this instance, Aldi. Now, just as a caveat, I've not looked into Aldi's policies here. This is just what's being reported. But there is a bit of a caveat as well to if this is a policy that they are running as to why it might be okay. But bear with me, I will come to explain that in just a moment. So these headlines say that Aldi's introduced a new bag search policy, meaning that it can refuse to serve customers if they don't comply with a new rule to be searched. Now, this reportedly is not just in all of the stores across the country. This is reportedly in a select few stores across the country. And shoppers are being told that they need to comply with a bag check or they'll be refused sale. Now, let's just make something absolutely clear. A shop security guard, or any security guard for that matter, has no power to search you, save in a very, very narrow circumstance that they might be forgiven. And that might be anything to do with terrorism and they're looking for a bomb and it's an abandoned bag and something like that. But that's far removed from a shopper going to a supermarket to buy groceries. So in any normal scenario like this, they simply can't do it. However, that doesn't stop the headlines popping up. This one was from some years ago, but there are several more that have popped up just recently about people being made to feel bad because they are being searched. And even sometimes here it says, in fact, I think under one of the headlines here, under this photograph, it says, shops are entitled to ask to search customers' bags, but they should be done in public view and so on. With respect, many people reading that might jump to the conclusion that shops are entitled to search companies' bags, which is not what the caption says. The caption actually is correct, but to understand it properly, word for word, this is where the wording is very important. They are entitled to ask to search your bag. They are not entitled to search your bag. That is very different. A shop has no power to search your bag. But this then comes on to an interesting point of, well, can shops detain you? Well, yes, in a narrow circumstance, because any person can, the term is no longer citizen's arrest, it is just arrest without warrant. And this is provided for under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984, namely Section 24A, which is any person may arrest without a warrant. So a person other than a constable may arrest without a warrant anyone who is in the act of committing an indictable offence. Now, many law students will pop up and say, well, shoplifting is a low-value offence and is therefore tried summarily only. But shoplifting is one of those obscurities where it is still an indictable offence because it is a offence of dishonesty, and a defendant to shoplifting can elect Crown Court trial, even for an amount under £200. And this is confirmed with a rather helpful explanation by the Sentencing Council in the sentencing guidelines for shoplifting, which describes what happens when a person might be caught shoplifting. And having said what I've just said, this website still refers to a citizen's arrest, doubtless just because it's not been updated yet. A security guard can make a citizen's arrest if someone is caught in the act of shoplifting, and it's not reasonably practicable for a police officer to make the arrest instead. So usually the police are not milling around these supermarkets, but if they happen to be there, that's fine. But usually if they do believe that you have shoplifted, they are likely to detain you, the security guards that is. And ultimately anyone who is detained and then the police arrive, they might be arrested and prosecuted. And many shops are now getting quite serious about this. And the sentencing and everything else to do with this obviously is set out here. It's the Sentencing Council guidelines. I will link that in the description below. Can they use force on you? Well, only to a degree and only what is reasonable. Security guards, just like anybody else for that matter, can use reasonable force to detain a shoplifter or someone who is committing an indictable offence under the Criminal Law Act in 1967. That is the provision for reasonable force. Can they detain you and search your bags? Short answer, no, they can't do that. They must wait until the police arrive. Some people even ask whether security guards can carry weapons. Of course not. They have no more power than a police officer. And even police officers are limited in what they can carry depending on their training and so on. So no, in short, a security guard cannot search your bag, cannot carry a weapon, can only use reasonable force to detain you, and it must be a justified reasonable force. And they are risking false imprisonment if they cannot justify later that there was sufficient ground to detain you in the first place. Because if we go back to Pace, a person other than a constable may arrest without a warrant anyone whom he has reasonable grounds for suspecting to be committing an indictable offence. And where it has been committed, anyone who is guilty of that offence or has reasonable grounds to suspect to be guilty of that offence. So those are the situations. But when we come to certain headlines, this one from the Daily Record doing the rounds again, which is more recent. This is from a few days ago. Apparently, Aldi adopting a bag search policy. Now, I did say and promised that I would come back to explain when this might be okay, because it's not necessarily all okay to force you to search your bag. They certainly can't do it without your consent. So the default position is they can only search your bag by consent. You allow them to. It's a bit like when you go into a nightclub and they say, you know, if you want to come in, we need to search your bag. If you say, no, you're not searching my bag, they won't let you in. It's as simple as that. That is not discriminatory. That is just a policy, a door policy, if you will, to allow you in. They want to search you and your bag, and you must consent to such a search. That would be deemed to be fairly reasonable, and they would have to justify why that's reasonable, etc. In the case of supermarkets, now, as I said, I haven't looked at the policy. I would hazard a guess that even without looking at it, Aldi would have set this up as a trial in certain stores and done it in such a way that they are making it a requirement of entry that you consent to a search before you purchase goods. And for that, it must be reasonably clear at the entrance, and you must be given reasonable notice, clear notice, that it is a requirement for you to purchase from the store to consent to a search, to go through the checkout process. And without that, they couldn't, in my view, simply say to you, you must consent to a search to buy the goods. Because the difficulty we've got, and it's a modern difficulty, is one which is probably yet to receive any real authority from the courts, is if someone has a shopping bag that they bring with them. I certainly do. I have several of those trolley bag things that I take, and they are my bags. It doesn't matter what kind of bag it is. That's just a bag that I take for shopping, and I've put stuff in it. Clearly, there is stuff in it that I've purchased from the shop. If I put stuff in it, and then I get to the exit, and it wasn't made clear to me that I must consent to a search in order to buy them, and I say, no, you're not searching my bags. I mean, I probably would. I wouldn't care, really. I would just say, yeah, fine, search the bag, whatever. Particularly because I use the self-scanner checkout things. So sometimes they do that anyway. That's an interesting tangent. Using those scanner things, there must be some kind of term there to say that you need to consent to the search, because every now and again it selects you to say you've won, so to speak. You're going to get your bag checked, and they're going to scan your groceries to check that you've scanned them all. And in all the years that I've done that, I've never once objected to a search. I've never once had a problem with anything that they've scanned. If ever there is a problem, and you'll notice that on the screens it says, did you find anything that you couldn't scan, or is there anything that's got a security tag on it? Another tangent. If it says on there, is there anything with a security tag, and there is, like alcohol or a chunk of meat that might well have a tag on it, say yes. And even if you know that you're just going to call someone over. The reason I say yes is the machine will record whether or not you say yes, there is something with a tag on it. If you said no, and then they find something in your bag that you genuinely didn't know was in there that or hadn't scanned, and then they check the records and it says you said no to anything with a security tag. Worse still, if the thing that wasn't scanned has got a security tag, that's even worse. That makes you look dishonest, even if you're not dishonest. So if there's something with a tag on it and it says, does anything have a security tag? Say yes and let them come and remove it. But in all the years that I've used it, I've never had a problem with them coming over, scanning, checking, and all that sort of stuff. But winding back my tangents, if the store was very clear that you need to consent to a search, then that's fine. If not, and you've got a bag which is clearly full of groceries that you didn't bring in with you and you haven't yet paid for, they still cannot just search your bag unless it was made sufficiently clear to you. Even when they say to you, you must have agreed, because there's a sign at the door to say that you must agree to the search when you come in. If you said, well, I didn't see that, you're not searching my bag, then in my view, they shouldn't search your bag. They should be detaining you on the suspicion that you are guilty of shoplifting and call the police, and the police should search you. And obviously the police have the powers to do that if they've got reasonable grounds and so on and so on. So just to dispel these myths a little bit, I would like people not to overreact and not to panic, because I don't think it's a big deal to agree for them to search your bag if indeed there is nothing to hide. Because I say this many times. I know sometimes in the comments people say, you just bow down to the system and so on, but I just think it's easier. I would never object to someone searching my bag. If they wanted to search my wife's purse, I probably would object to that. Well, I would object to that. There's no probably about it. I would object to that because A, she's clearly not going to put anything in there. B, she's clearly going to be innocent. And C, why would they want to search that unless they've got a damn good reason? So I would object. And I would then say, you have to detain us and then bring the police. And if they deem it necessary to search her bag, they can search it. But if you're wrong, it's false imprisonment, and I might claim against you. And I'd make that known at the outset. But I might also say, why is it you think that there's a need to search the bag? Because they need, after all, reasonable grounds. If we go back to PACE just for a moment, they do need here reasonable grounds for suspecting that someone is committing an indictable offence, or if they believe that it has been committed, reasonable grounds to suspect that you are guilty of that offence. And if they've got reasonable grounds, they should show you. So if you say, well, I don't agree with that, may I see the CCTV? That in and of itself could be taken to be a subject access request, because a subject access request to request any data they hold on you, which includes CCTV. I had a really bizarre comment on Twitter the other day to say that a photograph of someone's face is not personal information because it doesn't identify you. Well, of course it does. I mean, photographic ID has your face on it, and any personal information, whether by itself or taken with any other information, taken together can identify you. It's personal information. So, and that was in the context of somebody taking someone's photograph and putting it online. So in that sense, it could be misuse of personal information. But that was the tangent I had on Twitter the other day, which was quite funny. So that's the scenario there. If you want to see why they suspect you of shoplifting, just say, please consider this a subject access request for access to your data, and please do make sure you don't delete it in the interim, because that's another common trick is for some shops that don't want to give you that CCTV footage, they say it's accidentally been deleted. You can't have it. And it's amazing how often a 30-minute window of CCTV disappears and is not available. And just to make this clear, I'm not referencing Aldi because I've mentioned them in this video. I'm obviously not referencing them. It genuinely has nothing to do with Aldi. This is another case that we've worked on before where they've said, no, we don't have that 30 minutes. We have the bit either side, but that bit we don't have. It's quite remarkable. So hopefully that will dispel some myths, put people at rest somewhat. Let me know in the comments whether you've been subject to a search, whether you've been detained, rightly or wrongly, and what you think about all this. Would you consent to a search? Would you have a problem with a search? Would you draw the line at your significant other's personal bag? I certainly would. Let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.